Hello my creative friends, it's time to take another art break, and today we're going to be creating this sweet little bouquet of flowers. And some of the best little bouquets of flowers are some of the ones that you can just break the rules and create little simple flowers of little splish and splash colors of pattern of paint and come up with something so pretty and a little bit of scribbly bits at the end to add all the whimsical character. For those of you who'd like to have some help drawing, perhaps it's really not your thing, I can take care of that. I do have a membership. That's where I have all of the tracers for any of the paintings I do on my channel. It's very reasonably priced, and I so do appreciate all those who have joined and support my channel that way. Well, first I'm going to start out with giving you some ideas of how you could draw a water picture very similar to this, and then I'm going to lead you right in to the watercolor steps. So if you're just a beginner or maybe you're an experienced painter, just come along and take an art break with me. Don't concentrate on perfection, just concentrate on the process and have fun creating. With this drawing of the picture, I didn't really monkey too much with the perspective of like where you see the handle, what part don't you see. I just basically did the shape, added the beautiful color, and then the accents of the tablecloth. And that's what makes this picture look really special with all of those really pretty flowers on the top. So to begin with, to draw the picture, you need to find out where your top part was. This is where I'm going to draw it kind of long. This part will be narrower up here. It's going to go at an angle. So then we're going to draw this one here. It's going to be long and narrow, and it's going to come out as it comes down. And then this is going to have a curved bottom because this will give it that look of like it's going around. Now I'm going to put a little line at the top, like so it's going to have this little extra detail here to make it look like it's got maybe a little welded piece at the bottom. And that's going to follow the curve that I drew down here. Now I'm going to come up just a little bit higher now. So this is where my seam was of before I create the pouring part. So I'm going to come up just a little bit. And I'm going to make another little line. This is a smile face line here. So it's got a smile face, a little bit of a smile face here. That's the same with here too. There's smile face shapes. They're going to curve around. That'll give it a little bit more dimension. Now I'm going to come up on this side just a little ways. That's going to be a little shorter. This one's going to be longer, and we're going to create that pouring picture look. So I'm going to start up first, come up just a little ways, and then I'm going to start curving out like that direction. So I have something that looks like that. So it's curving around, and then I'm going to be making that spout. So I'm going to come back and then come down. And that's basically it for the shape. Now when drawing the handle, I'm going to start up a little high, and the first shape I'm coming down, I'm going to stay a little close to my container. So I'm going to come up, and then I'm going to come around. I always say it's like drawing an ear on your container. But I want it to come a little low at the bottom, so it's connected here. Now when I get down to the bottom, I'm going to make a little curvy knob just to give it a little decoration. And then when I come back up, I'm going to follow the line I just drew, and I'm not going to worry about the perspective. The thing that's going to really catch your eye is the flowers and the colors that you'd use, and that fun tablecloth is really a great idea. Just come up a little ways, so you want it to be up a little ways higher. You just don't want it in the middle of your picture, so you're going for about the lower third, and then you can build your tablecloth whatever it might be. So that's the simple drawing process. Let's go right on into the watercolor steps. The first step I did for this process is to create my color chart idea of the colors I was going to use. If you're a sketchbook member, I do include that chart so you have some inspiration when you're creating yours. But with watercolor, there's not a lot of give and take. Once you start with a color, you can't really choose to change it quite easily. So if I decided I wanted this to be a pink can, I don't have really a way to change it once I start, especially if I have this turquoise color underneath there. So it's best to have an idea of what colors you're going to use first. Today I'm painting on the Canson 140-pound watercolor paper. I always encourage everyone to spend just a tiny bit more money on your watercolor paper and just buy the paints that you can afford. I'm using a student grade paint today, and I've mixed up a light shaded turquoise. I mixed it about coffee consistency, and I'm going to be layering a layer of that turquoise everywhere, the lighter shade first. And then once I have that lightest shade on first, I'm going to load just a little bit darker shade of that turquoise, and then I'm going to kind of drag my brush down. I was hoping to get a little bit of texture in this watering picture because I wanted it to have a little bit more of a vintage feel to it. So I'm using my brush sideways and kind of dragging it down on that picture to see if I can create a little bit of texture. Now I'm going to give my paint a little bit more time to dry, and then I'll come back in and add the shadows to that area. While that area is drying, I'm going to move up and work on some of my flowers. When you're doing watercolor paint, it always wants to travel wherever the paper is wet. So in order to keep my colors separate, I want to choose the next area I paint in away from the wet watering pitcher area. So I'm going to pop up and do those little roses. I've just mixed kind of a brighter little raspberry color to about coffee consistency again, and I use the tip of my brush and then just make kind of C patterns with my brush, and I'm going to try to leave just a little bit of white paper peeking through those round rosy looking kind of colors to create that rose feeling. And here I'm working on this smaller little daisy flower. First I just added the blush color inside of there, and then I just ever so lightly picked up a shade of light pink and tapped it on my paint while it was still wet. I kind of head towards more of the center, tap that color, and because it's wet on wet, that color is going to blend up and in. I was showing you that I was choosing to paint a light shade of green. I had mixed a little bit of white into my paint. I often forget about using the white in my color of paints, but it's really a great way to kind of mix more of a pastel-y color. When doing the greenery, it's just a great idea to change up the shade of your greens. So some of mine were going to be a pale green. Then I was going to be using more of this bright shade of green, but then tapping in just that darker shade of green at the base of the leaf and letting the water kind of manipulate and bring that color up and through that leaf. Now, because this is a student grade paper, I may have to manipulate that paint just a little bit, and that means I'm going to rinse it out in my clean water, give it a squeeze lightly, and then just kind of tickle that paint together ever so lightly to get it to move. In this step, you're seeing me use my little mini brush. I do have some links down inside of the description box. It's a small little detail brush. It does come in handy to make some of these small little line detail using this little brush. Now I'm going back into that blush color and tapping it on the petals that I have drawn there, coming back into that pink color and tapping it ever so lightly towards that more of that center, and then that water should draw it up into that peach color. I'm okay if it blends a little bit into that rose that's next to it because those colors play well together, and even if they blend a little bit, it doesn't really matter. They're not complementary colors. They're more adjacent colors on your color wheel, so I don't have to worry about it creating some dull color. It's just going to be a different shade of pink there if it happens to blend. Now I'm going to move down and work on these leaves in the very front, and I'm going to change up my greens again. This time I'm using more of a blue-green and tapping that on to those little leaf areas that I drew. And I'll be tapping in another color of green as well, double mixing my colors while the paint is still wet. You're going to notice me kind of mixing my own colors too, so I'll pick up a green, but maybe there's already a little puddle of green there, and I'll mix that together too and add it to those certain areas. It's a great way to make your painting look more cohesive and harmonized because you're using paints that you've already used someplace else and combining them together and making a new color. And it just adds a really nice sense of harmony to your painting. Now I'm selecting a little bit more turquoisey green to create some of those leaves at the top. When I'm creating a painting, I like to carry my colors throughout. So if I have some of that turquoise color at the top, it's going to go with that turquoise color in the middle of that watering can too. So that's going to balance my painting. I am going to be adding a really bright kind of an orange zinnia almost feel right in that center off to the left there, that big flower. And that's going to act as a really pop of color because those colors are complementary to each other. And it's going to just draw your eye right to that bright color. But it's going to look beautiful to have that bright, bold orange flower sitting there. When painting this painting, I basically used a number 6 Princeton Velvet Touch brush. It's got a round brush. It's got a nice little point on it. It keeps that little sharp little point, so when you use it, that shape's going to really pop back, and it's going to keep that nice point, which comes super handy when you're doing these small illustration paintings. I do have some links inside of the description box if you want to check some of the items out that I'm using. Well, here comes that bright orange colorful flower. I chose the lightest shade of orange first. I put that on my petals, and then I went over just one more shade over, which is more of a red orange, and I tapped that in the same way that I had done those pink, little tiny pink ones up at top, the daisies, where the colors just blend together. So I started light, tapped in a darker shade of orange next to that center, and let the colors just kind of blend and go together. Now I decided I'm going to bump down and work on that tablecloth. That picture has had plenty of time to dry, so I don't have to worry about those colors mixing together. And I wanted this bright pop of yellow at the base, so I chose a golden color in my set, and I just washed that color everywhere. I'm going to be laying some shadows in after this dries, so this is just the first layer. It's mixed to about coffee consistency, and I'm just brushing it over that shape. I'm not looking for perfect, even, completely smooth colors. To me, the beauty of watercolor is seeing the irregular colors, and that's what I'm kind of going for. So you can see how I picked up a little bit more of that golden color. It's probably mixed to about more of like a milk consistency, a lot less water. But because I'm putting it on that wet paint, those lines are going to soften a little bit as it kind of sits and works with the water a little bit. Now I'm going to pop up and finish a little bit more of the flower areas. This is a good process to kind of keep in mind that you need to let your colors dry somewhat so then you can see how they are drying, because watercolor usually dries lighter. What you see, what it looks like when it's wet, is most likely going to look lighter as it dries. You're going to need probably at least 2 layers of color on. Your first layer is just your beginning base, and then you're going to be adding that second layer and perhaps even a third layer, depending on how much more color you need in your painting. So I just basically build those colors, let them dry, and then add the next layer. It's best to keep your layers light and then work to the darker colors. If you go too dark too quick, your paint's going to become looking very chalky, not translucent. And the translucency is what we really enjoy about watercolor, so we want to make sure we keep some of those elements like that. Here I'm coming in, I've mixed up a turquoise color using some blue and some green, and I'm going to be adding a little bit more of that darker turquoise just in the center where that label is, and on the little dots that go around. It's kind of like a raised metal area. And then those bands of where perhaps it was welded together, I'm going to add just a little bit there, and I'm adding a darker edge just on the inside of the handle, trying to leave the tiniest bit of highlight there. Now here I'm doing more of that dragging of that brush, where I loaded my brush with some of the darker color and I'm holding it sideways and then pulling it down and hoping to see a little bit of that brush texture and some unevenness. I was really wanting some texture in this. I'm not looking for a smooth water picture type of look to this. I'm also adding a little bit darker shadow on the outside of the edges and then kind of tickling that area to blend it so I don't have such strong blends or bands of color. So if I can just kind of softly, subtly kind of manipulate that color on the edge, I'll get less of a band look. Here I am now going in and adding some even darker areas. I really kind of wanted to bump it up even a little bit more. Now my paper hasn't all the way dried, so I'm coming in and laying this color on while my paper is still wet a little bit, and I'm blending that color out. I love the extra pop of that dark green, and I thought it looked really nice in the end when it dried. My goal I was trying to accomplish is trying to keep that centerpiece where my wording was going to be a little bit lighter than the rest of the pouring picture. So I wanted to see if I could leave a little bit lighter color in there. I can't remember when it dries if it actually shows or not in this video, but that was what my goal was, is I wanted to give that a feeling like that was raised and kind of not next to the metal, but perhaps just a little bit lighter, brighter area in there where the lettering was going to do. That was an area where my color went past, my watering color area went past into the white area of my background, and I knew I wanted to keep my background white, so I let that area dry. Then I went in with my brush and dipped it in some clean water, gave it a squeeze, and then kind of came over to that area and then lightly tickled that area to see if I could lift some of the color, and that worked just fine. When you're doing that process, I always say kind of tickle your paper, because if you rub too hard, your paper is going to get roughed up and you'll probably see a difference in the texture. So it's the best way if you're going to lift paint is to dip your water in clean water, give it a squeeze, and then just kind of gently tickle that area to see if you can lift it. Now I'm coming back in again to those greens and the flowers and adding another layer of the colors. And I could just go back and forth. I don't even have to use the same color I had used originally. I could change it up if I want to, but I also can use the same color because watercolor is translucent. Every layer that you make, even though it's the same color, it's going to change the darkness of the color that's underneath it. So you can still have some of the highlights that you originally put on, which your goal is to try to keep some of those, but you also can darken your colors or add the shadows by even just using the same color. Mix the same way you put it on coffee to that consistency, but it's going to darken that color in that area. And here I'm just working on that shadow area on the inside of the handle. I'm going to try to leave that highlight color. If I lose it completely, I can always go in at the end, use a uni-ball pen or some sort of other white or a white pencil perhaps to maybe add just a little bit of highlight if I lose it completely. Now that that orange flower has completely dried, I'm going to pop into the center. I'm making almost a donut shape. Around it's going to be white, but in the middle I'm going to be tapping in a little bit more of that darker red orange. And then while it's still wet, that darker orange is still wet, I'm going to pick up some of the yellow that I had used down at the line of the tablecloth, and I'm going to tap that around that little donut shape and have those colors blend together. Now that the flowers have pretty much dried, I'm going to come in and add just a real soft background and indications of maybe there's some flowers in the background, but you don't see exactly flower shapes. So I'm going to be using the same colors I had painted my flowers and then just add some water to it about tea consistency now because I don't want a real dark look back there. And I'm just going to kind of swish my brush back and forth, let my colors mix, and create that soft little blended look in the background. The part of the watercolor is just about finished. I'll make sure it's completely dry before I take the tape off and then add the next step of adding the scribbly bits in the ink work. With this painting, I got super excited about adding the pencil work. I love using the Prismacolor Premier line of color pencils to add this little bit of scribbly bit of color on top of it. I always enjoy using watercolor as my base, and then I like to build up the additional texture and line work using color pencils and ink. But I wanted to back it up just a little bit. What I should have done was my micron pen work first. And the reason is because the color pencils have a waxy base to them, and the micron pen's not going to want to sit over top of it very well. So actually I should have put my micron pen on first if that's the pen I wanted to use to create my dark lines, and then add my color pencils on top. It's just kind of keeping your layers in mind. Pen ink first, then color pencils, because the two don't want to necessarily sit on top of each other. The thing I like to do with my color pencils is I like to add some surprise elements, perhaps even using colors that I didn't use in my watercolor, but add that to my pencil lines. I like using irregular lines. I love the look of like hand-drawn, sketchy, loose drawings. So I like to twist and pull my color pencils, go past my painted items. I don't want to try to create a color book look where everything is just perfect. So I'm looking for those irregular lines. I'm looking for the thick and thin and creating a little bit of surprise by maybe adding some colors I didn't use with my watercolor and add that in with my color pencils. Now this is all just very much how I like to create. If you enjoyed the watercolor process and you're happy with how yours looks, you don't even have to do this step, but if you want to play and try and see if you also like creating this way, it's super simple to do. The pencils are fairly reasonably priced. Again, I'll have some links down inside of the box if you'd like to check them out. It's just a great way to create super playful. I love the process of doing this. I'm not looking for perfect. I just really do enjoy the creative process of combining the two together of the color pencils, watercolor, and the pen. Now I finally remembered, oh, I have to do that pen work. And this time I am using a micron pen in the tip size 005, so it's fairly small, and it's in the color of the sepia, the darker brown color. I've started to use this color and I'm really liking it, even more so than just having black. Often black can be very harsh, but this is just kind of a slightly different look. So if you would like to try that out, I'm going to recommend the sepia tone micron pens. I believe I found mine. I'm thinking I found mine at Micron's or at Michael's, but I probably have a link down in the comment for where I found this set that I'm using. And again, I like the same type of line quality where it's very much sketchy, stop and start, irregular lines. It just adds that little bit of energy to my painting that I'm looking for. After doing all the little scribbly bits, I've decided I wanted to make sure I added a shadow underneath that water pitcher to kind of anchor it more on that tablecloth. So I just mixed up that same gold color with a little bit more brown in it and created a shadow underneath it. And I thought that finished it off really well. And I didn't have to worry about the micron pens moving around at all because they were dry. And once they're dry, it's a permanent ink. So the micron pens work perfect if you need to add additional things over the top. Now, watercolor is not a permanent item, so I need to either wax my painting or add a spray varnish on the top. I like using the Rust-Oleum flat varnish for this part, or just put it underneath glass to help protect it. Well, let's take a look and see what it looks like sitting in my studio amongst some of the other things we've created so far on my YouTube channel. This spring and early summer, it has been so fun to create so many of these bloom-filled paintings. I love that little bird, and the teapot looks so great, full of the little flowers. This pouring picture with the bright bouquet that kind of breaks a few little rules and you don't have to be exact was so fun to create. If you enjoy creating whimsical style paintings or whimsical style crafts, come on over and see what I'm doing. I'd love to have more creative friends join me. If you haven't subscribed yet, consider doing so. Leave me a thumbs up, give me a comment. It really does help YouTube push my videos out there. Well, thank you for joining me today, and hopefully you'll come back and join me again, and perhaps next time you'll paint right along with me.